Hi everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 307. Been a while. Also, funnily enough, Izuku's dad's name is, I think, a pun on been a while. Anyway, hey everyone. So, here we are at chapter 307. We are in the first official chapter of the final act, or I guess the second, depending how you count it. Whatever. General notes for this week, there are a few. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about the movie and I guess the first episode of the anime at the end of the video. Just little notes. I do have an article put up for the movie. I guess in terms of a general note, I want to tell you guys about a commenter, White Despair. White Despair does this thing where he goes around and he reads the things that people are posting online about Hero Academia, and then White Despair shares it with me. Really wonderful person. The reason I'm bringing that up is because of an interesting thing here. So when I saw Shindo, or Yo, whatever you want to call him, when I saw him in this chapter, when I saw him in the spoilers, my first real reaction was, oh, he's only here because, well, he was popular on the popularity poll. That's why he's here. That was my knee-jerk response to that one. I think I might be correct on that one, because really, Horikoshi is good enough that he could really have slotted any character in here to make this work. An easy alternative to this whole situation would have been Rocklock and Manual, because Rocklock, if the fight is about keeping muscular in place, you could have made something up for Rocklock, and we know more about Rocklock than we know about Shindo. So, really, it could have been any other character. That's what I really want to tell you here. I do think he is here because of the popularity poll, as funny as that is. And the reason that I want to bring that up is just because White Despair told us on the live stream how people were saying that Shindo here was the author's way of getting revenge for the popularity poll, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. When you look at Shindo in the chapter, he actually is living up to heroic ideals. Even though he's getting beaten, he's living up to heroic ideals. Shindo gets a winner's edit, so to say, when it comes to this chapter, and it just reminds you, if you're just looking at the fights, you're going to miss a lot of the context. My Hero Academia isn't just about the fights, especially not in this era of Hero Academia, where it's so focused on a lot of tiny efforts coming together to make a big positive change. When you look back at the whole war, the efforts of Manual and Rocklock, even though they were very small, very minuscule, they ultimately led to a bigger return that was keeping Aizawa in the game as long as they could. So that's why, that kind of thinking just doesn't really work, and it's just worth pointing out. As we go through the chapter, I will talk about which spots Shindo is actually doing really well in, because at the end of the day, this was legitimately, if the theory is it was mostly the female vote and maybe the mom vote that got Shindo into the popularity poll's top rankings. I know someone else has also told me another weird little thing. Given that, what you have with Shindo here is largely fan service. Anyway, that was my only general note. It's not really that big of a chapter. A lot of the chapter is kind of wasted in just fight pages. It's kind of sensational this week, but that's not a problem. Let's just get into it right now. So page 1. This was the establishing shot to justify why Yo and his girlfriend and only them are here. I was confused about Jailbreaker because I saw that it was muscular in the spoilers, and I was very surprised they were calling it Jailbreaker. But it makes sense later in the chapter. Anyway, talking about Jailbreaker, the fact that Muscular has gotten that name, even though his villain name, I think... Actually, do people know his villain name? I guess not, because we didn't find out about his villain name until, I guess, extra materials. Okay, well, knowing that he's being called Jailbreaker, it highly implies that Muscular is agreeable to All For One's plans, in the sense that if All For One told people to go break into jails, the fact that Muscular went there, so much so that he got the name Jailbreaker, then it suggests that Muscular is okay listening to All For One, at least when their interests align. And that in of itself isn't so surprising, because Muscular had previously shown that he was quite okay with working in groups, given that he was working with Shigaraki. On page 2, it largely reintroduces Yo and his girlfriend and references Miss Joke. Oh, now that I'm thinking about reintroductions, this chapter does have a few reader aids for a few spots. Like, for instance, the reintroduction of Yo is a reader aid, but there's something going on with Muscular that I'll point out later on in the video. Okay, page 3 is an establishing shot of one of the civilian centers, and this is just a characterization page. Otherwise, just tells us that they're hunkering down in what looks like to be a gym. I guess the other little detail is that Yo's high school is a shelter, but I think we already knew that. Page 4. Okay, is the full characterize the public page. So the ultimate critical thing here is that the civilians are talking from a position of not knowing the true horrors of the top tier villains. Because when you look at it, it's the top tier villains that cause the majority of the problems from the war. So when they say that their eyes are wide open and everything else, they're really still in the overreaction phase of trying to cope with the whole situation. One funny line here was how this guy was talking about defending his shop, and it's like, he's not at his shop now. I doubt that shop is still standing. Anyway, the civilians still aren't at a point of actually understanding things, and Yo's right to point it out in this page. I understand why the civilians would be skeptical about going to what legitimately would be a big target. Like, their logic seems pretty tight there, because what the heroes are saying is that yes, you will be a bigger target, but we will be able to defend you better. It's a little bit of a, I can understand why they're a little bit, Also worth pointing out, people afraid and wanting to protect what's theirs. These are the type of people that All For One preys on. Since these people ultimately want to protect themselves, All For One's manipulation tactics would work really well on these people, since his thing is all about power dynamics. So really, it's just a reminder, the civilians are stooges. Their mindsets play into what the villains want. Everyone buying from Detnerat especially are being taken for a ride. We already know this. Page 5. The guy is disillusioned with heroes. Honestly, it's nice to know that people aren't relying on heroes as heavily, but again, this is overcompensation. The pendulum is going to swing the other way eventually. The happy medium, I think, is to rely on heroes the way you rely on a fireman. Like, you're not going to tell a fireman no when he comes to break into a burning house, right? And you're most definitely not going to try to do that in the worst situation. Really, happy medium is, leave the extreme stuff to the heroes, but help where possible. If you see a kid walking alone outside, don't just say, oh, a hero's going to deal with it. You can help out. I think that's the thing that everyone can do. Everyday heroes. Anyway, this page shows how much the civilians don't know. It's because of the heroes that things didn't get worse, arguably. And I know people say that Shigaraki wouldn't have destroyed everything if he was left to his own devices, but do recall chapter 273. After being woken up, Shigaraki tells Higanto this is when they destroy everything. Then chapter 283, where Shigaraki asks what the date is. In other words, Shigaraki, thinking he was fully cooked, was ready to go, called over Higanto. So if you're willing to say that Shigaraki wasn't going to go wild the moment he woke up, then you're saying that Shigaraki was lying or exaggerating, given that the moment he woke up and after defending himself from a few heroes, he was ready to go. Arguably, this is not the worst case scenario. That said, it was still pretty dumb to not put Higanto Makia in check when you had the opportunity to. Overall, I think it's fair to say that the heroes botched the operation. The heroes and the Public Safety Commission botched. But they did mitigate the worst damage potential. And eventually the civilians are going to realize that when they realize the reality of the dangerous world they live in. Page 6 was just reminding readers of Shindo's personalities. He has a little bit of a grump to him. And we have Shindo's classmates calling in. One interesting point here is that Shindo says flat out, how long are the cell towers even going to last? Very interesting that they're relying on cell phone towers. Like, I think they could go radio on this one. But yeah, no, I actually really appreciate that, because cell phones are really convenient. So I'm glad that the author is pointing out, like, oh yeah, like, society sucks, but the cell phone towers are still holding up. I do like that he acknowledged that. Page 7 was just a confusing page for me. So at this point, worth pointing out, Itajiro and Makabe, those two are characters we saw in the provisional license exam. They're Shindo's classmates, if anyone was wondering. But yeah, this page was confusing, because when you see that little booger fly in from the building, right? I thought that was Muscular flinging someone, like another hero around. But no, come to find out, you turn the page and it's Muscular jumping around in booger form and just breaking a bunch of buildings. And people say the villains are well adjusted. Anyway, page 8 and 9 was the reveal that Muscular was a jailbreaker. Honestly, again, surprised that it was actually Muscular who had gotten that name. Page 10, Shindo pulls out a knife to make his final stand like a real hero. I really appreciate that he has a weapon on him. Page 11 was Muscular making a comment about the free world. So this is where you remember that in a world like this, the free world, When you see Muscular breaking a building for the fun of it, it's flat out just the reality that villains will cause society to stagnate. Just by the nature of what the majority of the villains are, this is just not who we want around. These are not the people we want at the top. The same way that technological development stopped during the onset of the quirk phenomena, it's going to be the same way it's going to happen here. The villains largely are anti-society. If it was up to them, they'd take us back to the Stone Age. Well, it depends. All for One is really the one who needs society to still be there, so it really depends. It'd pretty much be chaotic evil versus lawful evil. We'd have to see who wins out. It would be lawful evil, unless chaotic evil Shigaraki like goes crazy. But yeah, this is just again a reminder. Villains and the villain rhetoric is just anti-societal in the context of Hero Academia. On page 11, the civilians decide they're gonna try to fight Muscular. Page 12 is damage depiction. Do note Shindo was on the floor before. Muscular took him to a roof. Also note that Shindo's really durable. If I had like 12,000 layers of muscle pressing on my body with broken concrete behind me, I'd die. I would hit rebar before. I wouldn't be like Shindo. I don't know how hard Shindo's skin could be in this situation, man. Like, his back broke cement. I don't know. I would never be able to. Page 13 is the armor page. So this line is actually really important because this is where the narrative starts happening. This is a reintroduction line. What the author is trying to set up here is, oh, Izuku has to deal with layers of armor. It'll be cool to see what exactly Izuku is trying to beat, kind of thing. He also has Muscular mention no piddly power is going to break through it, which is again setting up Izuku. It's like, you know, Muscular's riding a high only to be brought down, right? It's gonna taste really good when we see it. Also, I forgot, that should have been a general note, but we will talk about it at the end, what exactly this fight means for Izuku in terms of the narrative. Oh, sorry guys. Page 14 is Shindo setting up his heroic ideal. That is that heroes don't give up. When you have a guy going all out, saying he's not going to run away, he's not going to be a coward, how can you call that guy a loser? Shindo, he's the hero that everyone wants to be around, a hero that doesn't run away when things get tough. This is a heroic ideal. Yeah, it's unfortunate he doesn't have the firepower to actually take on Muscular, but a lot of heroes don't have the firepower to take on Muscular, and he's an intern. Good for him. On that note, though, also worth pointing out, it's worthwhile. What he did was worthwhile. The reality is, Shindo bought enough time for the girl to run back to the building, up all those flights of stairs, to get back to the civilians and tell them to get out of there. Yeah, they ignore her, but he bought her that time, and every second he did that was also every second he gave Izuku more time to come find him. With Hero Academia and the weaker heroes, it's all about little efforts building up to something worthwhile. Page 15 is a reminder again of Muscular's mechanics, specifically the extra armoring. We should expect to see this mechanism come in play versus Izuku, because this is how Muscular tried to deal with Izuku before. When he sees that something big is coming, he'll usually armor himself up. I think it's reasonable to say that maybe Muscular chooses not to use his maximum armor, maybe because it impairs his mobility. He must have a quirk weakness, and the overproduction of muscle fibers might just make him either too much of a moving target or hard to move around in, right? On this page, we also see really cool nuance from the civilians, and this is why it's important to remember that what the civilians are doing and their problems, those are coming from an overreaction of basic ideas. And it's not that the basic ideas are wrong, it's just it's an issue of excess, right? It's over-exaggeration. So really, once they reel back this really emotional response, the civilians will be in a much nicer place, because they'll have taken some of the lessons that they learned through this ordeal, and they'll apply it in more reasonable ways. So that's why I absolutely respect this moment, because the author is in a position where he needs to make sure that the civilians can still be seen as victims. Because right now, the civilians have an antagonistic role in terms of what they're doing to the story, but they're not villains. They're just antagonists. They're just annoying. That's why the author has to make sure that at the end of the day, the readers still want to see the civilians rescued. So for that, you know, legitimately, this moment does help. Yeah, the guy saying that he's going to go save that kid, he doesn't understand, maybe he doesn't have proper danger estimation abilities, but it's still an admirable thing to say. Page 16 is the Izuku arrival page, though I can't really tell how exactly he made contact with Muscular. I don't know if that was an air blast or that was him kicking. It's really hard to tell. And then page 17 is the Izuku stuff. So there's a few things here. First off, the bridal carry. I don't care. The fangirls, a good chunk of them must have enjoyed seeing Izuku bridal carry Shindo. Mind you, I don't know how that part of the fandom works, but that must have made someone squeal. Look, if people squealed over Bakugo being upset about Izuku in the hospital, I'm pretty sure this will make someone squeal. Someone out there. Weirder things have happened. So that was one thing, and then how do I go about doing this? There's 2 more points I have. I guess the next point is Izuku's dialogue. Not gonna lie, I kind of cringed a little bit at it. I'm not a fan of the dialogue. I'm not a fan of the choices. First off, I will just flat out say, if Izuku saying muscular can be heard by muscular, if muscular can hear Izuku's voice, I don't know why Izuku feels okay to like say something, no wonder my gift from the fourth wouldn't shut up. Now mind you, it's vague enough, but you know, when people make these kind of comments, it's like, just a little bit of a cringe there. And then the actual wording of what Izuku says, I'm not gonna lie, made me kind of sad. Not the first part, no wonder my gift from the fourth, that's fine. But the wouldn't shut up, that's not Izuku's character, right? That's Bakugo's rhetoric. Felt kind of bad there. So here we can actually talk about how appropriate this was. Is it justified? Yes, 100%. It's 100% justified. Izuku's not in a good place. Izuku, you could see he's tired. So him having this kind of harsh tone is alright. I really hope this is the correct translation and not just Viz trying to make it edgier. But I'm kind of sad that we are actually seeing Ejuku here to some degree, even if it's just sleep deprived Ejuku, because like with what he's saying about danger sense, it's totally reasonable to think that danger sense is keeping Izuku up at night. Because again, the wouldn't shut up is like has a more antagonistic tone towards danger sense there. But yeah, no, seeing Ejuku and the way he's talking here, it's justified. The first route to justify the choice of words here is, of course, Izuku is mentally drained. So, you know, when you're tired, you're a little bit snappier. The other justification, though, that I'm concerned about is potentially that Izuku got told something that changed his perspective. Because, like, Muscular is one of the guys that Izuku was saying, like, maybe if I talked to them, maybe something could have been different. If Izuku doesn't try to talk to him, one, I think that'll be the good move, because Muscular really, I don't think he even has that many points devoted to talking. So I think it would be a waste of time to talk with him. But if we go down that route, I'm going to be way more curious about what exactly happened that it changed Izuku's perspective so quickly. And I mean, there's a lot of already plot details in here that are already kind of concerning, like the fact that he has Gran Torino's cape, right? Like it brings up, is Gran Torino dead or is he alive? Hard to say. I want to believe he's alive and that cape is just something he gave him, but you can never really be too sure. Anyway, yeah, man, the choice of words really got me. It made me feel sad for the character. And the thing here is that this dark period, I know a lot of fans enjoy the edge on Ejuku here, but this dark period isn't going to last. And it's largely because of the structure of the heroic journey. So the heroic journey, for those that don't know, is a story structure, and it's cyclical. It starts from the top and it goes all the way around. It's a full revolution. The point of the heroic journey is to start at the place of ideal, to make your journey, and then get to the place of ideal again after learning so much. So the way to explain it would be like, it's the difference between smiling because someone told you to smiling because you know that it's the right thing to do. And that's the thing. Hero Academia is an idealistic story. Hero Academia has set up the examples that Izuku's trying to follow, that being All Might's general demeanor. Ejuku isn't going to last, because at the end of the day, the story is about inspiring hope for people around you. So what it's ultimately telling you is that Izuku's going to go through his dark period that he's in right now, and he's going to climb back to that place of idealism. We're going to be seeing Izuku the way he was in the first chapter, except the finale Izuku is going to be an Izuku who has understood the value of having that perspective and has the experiences to how would I say it? He has the experience to really understand why he smiles at the end of the story. That's the big thing here. This story is not going to end with Ejuku, right? But that leads me to my next point. specifically the value of a mask. Izuku has put on the mask, and he doesn't really do this very often. Yeah, you know, it's a super cool visual, and I do think Horikoshi really likes the mask, and he wants to use it more often. I mean, again, super cool visual. We all know that Horikoshi has wanted to do post-apocalyptic for a very long time, because he does it in all the color pages. And yeah, Izuku looks great. But I do want to remind you of what exactly the value of the mask is, and why Izuku might have put it on. So, if you remember, back in chapter 129, Mirio made a little comment about the mask, or like, Mirio had put Izuku's mask on, and then Izuku went through a whole little thing where he talked about it, or where he internalized what a mask is for. Like, the mask is about putting on a good face. What Izuku learned in chapter 129 is that the mask prevents people from seeing his emotions, and it doesn't give away much to the enemy, because in that time it was Shizaki. When Izuku puts his mask on here, I do legitimately think, especially because Izuku's mask is still set up to be a smile, I think he's putting it on because he doesn't want people to see how miserable he is on the other side. And from the last chapter, we have reason to believe that he's miserable. We don't know about what yet, but reason to believe, right? So, but him wearing that mask, I think, is just indicative of how much he's suffering. And we know he's suffering because Ochako narratively set that up. But I digress. This is, I think that was really good. I do hope that the author talks more about the mask use. I think we have a good enough reason with just him wanting to hide how miserable he looks. But I would love to see the author actually say that out loud, because that would be really worthwhile. Anyway, those are the points for page 17. So at that point, you know, what happens next? Well, first, I guess, let's talk about Muscular. You know, what is the point of Muscular in this whole situation? Well, this would be a really good benchmark. I know when we were talking on the live stream, some people are excited because we're gonna see how much Izuku has grown. But I do want to point out that there are some irregularities with the fight, and it won't be a proper benchmark type situation, because Izuku's arms got worse after the Muscular fight, and also Muscular, you know, he might have the capacity to tank Izuku's hit if he puts on extra armoring. And that's why the lines that the author reminded us of, specifically the layers of armor that he's wearing right now and the extra layering that he can do for a moment, is really important, because that's most likely the mechanism by which the fight's going to revolve around. So overall, in terms of like the narrative purpose of the fight, it would be very cool to see the benchmark comparison, see how much Izuku has grown since summer camp. It's been almost a year. It'd be cool to see that. It'd be very visceral. But there are still the complications in the background of Izuku's limits and also his busted arms. And also beyond that, you know, seeing what kind of fight it's going to devolve into. I do think that instead of being purely about strength, I believe that the fight will be more about skill, especially now because Izuku should be a little bit more unpredictable. Muscular's whole thing here is that if he knows something is coming, he can put on the extra layers of armor. So if Izuku removes his predictability, it'll be really interesting. Izuku should be able to wipe Muscular in his regular form. So I guess, yeah. So overall, I would like to see skill play as opposed to brute force. If I see Izuku being very careful with his approaches, I think that would be a very good fight. Further though, like, you know, what else can this fight do? Well, we also have the factor of the civilians. The civilians right now are being very, very stubborn. Traditionally, I would say it would be good for the civilians to be inspired. Like, if we have a fight that ultimately tells the civilians, like, yeah, you know what, maybe we should go to the shelter, I think that would be really, really good. But are we actually going to get that? Because to get that kind of response, you need to have Izuku struggle. Because if Izuku makes Muscular look like he was a chump, the civilians aren't going to learn any lessons. They're just going to see, oh, that guy did it easily. Yeah, we can do it too. He's a child. We can do it too. Because civilians are stupid like that, usually in manga. I think the one that you can see this mechanism in One Punch Man. So because if we're saying that the author wants to go to a position where he has the civilians go to the shelter, the odds aren't great here, because then that says that Izuku's more likely to struggle in the Muscular fight, because it's usually struggle that makes someone else, or that inspires someone. And honestly, with the way Izuku's presented here, he's coming in here pretty strong, right? He was able to bump Muscular off of Shindo, so he's got the firepower right now. it's going to be really interesting. I guess, actually, I mentioned that Izuku's arms are damaged, but his legs are still good to go. His legs legitimately could be the big kicker here to actually win this fight. Okay, yeah, you know what? If we're going brute force, I think it's going to rely on the legs, unless we find out about whatever shenanigans is going on with the arms. But yeah, let's keep talking about more perspective things. So there's one route. This fight will be easy for Izuku. It'll serve a narrative purpose of saying how much Izuku has grown. It'll be cool. We'll all be really excited. In this particular route, I don't think we end up with the civilians learning a lesson, but I do think we have a new factor of Shindo having seen Izuku. So maybe if people are coming after Izuku, Shindo can point them in the right direction. I think that would be very interesting. Let's go into the other potential route. That is, Izuku struggles against Muscular. Like, he's doing better than he was the first time they fought, but maybe there's a few little problems here and there. In that route, I'm not going to lie, when I saw Muscular, I didn't believe it. I didn't think he was actually going to show up in the next chapter. Recently, though, the majority of my predictions have been based around, oh, he wouldn't go that fast. But then again, the author's been going so fast with the recent chapter of Hero Academia. So Muscular is here. When I saw him, in my mind, I always felt like if Muscular showed up, Bakugo's going to show up. And Bakugo's going to be there to help Izuku. So I'm biased. I really want Bakugo, Ida, and Shoto to show up because I think that would just say so much about what the author is thinking. So I would love if Izuku struggles for the sake of Bakugo, Ida, and Shoto showing up within the next 2 chapters. Or, any of those 3. I'll take any of those 3. If I get all of them, I'll be very happy. So in that route, Izuku struggles, Bakugo shows up, they do team play, they take out Muscular fully. In this route, those 4... let's say the most ideal, or whoever comes after Izuku probably will stick with Izuku for a while, and they probably will not go to UA. So I think that's the other potential route here. In terms of the Izuku struggle route, you could also have Stain showing up to help Izuku. This could be a separate thing altogether. Stain might come in with some really aggressive rhetoric, though, and he might come in with some aggressive moves. Like, he might end up killing Muscular, although I'm not sure what that's going to do to Izuku, so I don't think that would happen, but it would be really interesting. But yeah, overall, I'm excited. I'm super excited. For me, personally, I'm really, really hoping that Bakugo or Shoto or Ida shows up. But if we get just flat out an Izuku power demonstration, I'd be quite happy next week. Are there any things that are guaranteed to happen next week? I think definitely Izuku is going to have nice and kind words for Shindo. Because usually when a good person loses, the author always gives them like some kind of saving grace to make it feel like it's not a real loss or something like that. Something like, oh, Shindo, you bought a lot of time, thank you, or something like that. I don't think Izuku is going to be dark or ejiku towards the heroes because the heroes are suffering along with him in this situation. Oh wait, gotta talk about the extra materials, the movie and the anime episode. The anime episode, I did a reaction for it, but the file corrupted, so too bad. The anime episode was a standard recap. That was alright. I did find some things that they did. Some choices revolving around Ochako were interesting. But yeah, if I manage to salvage it, I'll put it up, but I don't think I will because it's pretty corrupted. Anyway, the episode was alright. I do think some spots, because it's a filler episode, are weak, but whatever. In terms of the movie is interesting because when you read about the movie is just a giant collection of plot devices all trying to say like, hey guys, this movie's going to be bigger than ever. It's just pretty extreme. It's a pretty extreme movie. So just to give you a quick summary of the movie if you don't know about it, because Silicon Era did translate some of the stuff here. So I'll just read out what Silicon Era has. Series protagonist Izuku Midoriya, whose hero alias is Deku, is wanted for mass murder. This is a scene that pops up in the teaser real quick. An unknown character asks whether the quirk superpowers are a blessing upon humanity or the power that brings the world to its end. So this is just apocalyptic. In flashes, a robed villain is shown standing atop a pile of bodies, including the bloodied forms of characters like Ochako, Tsuyu, and Kirishima. That when you see the shot in the trailer, that's just a hypothetical. It's not actually going to happen. Well, I hope it won't actually happen, but it's happening in the time skip for the internships, so you know it's not going to have any long-lasting effects. The voice of All Might, Izuku's mentor, begs the future heroes And we have on-screen text saying that the time limit until global extinction is 2 hours. So great. We are dealing with a world-ending plot. There's various heroes coming in stealth formation. The official website revealed more backstory. There is an advocating of a fringe theory that the presence of Quark's powers will lead to the end of humanity. A mysterious organization called Humorize is aiming to annihilate Quark powers and the people that hold them. Okay, so that's pretty genocidal. So they want a world of only Quirkless. Human rights operatives infiltrated various countries and set up ideal trigger bombs activated by the presence of Quirks. To save people from the bombs, the UA Academy mustered a global scale team of pro heroes and interns, sending them across the world to collect the devices. Izuku, Bako, and Shoto are operating in Ocean, a faraway country, as part of their internship with the Endeavor Agency, so that's what's telling you where exactly we are. And they are involved in an international incident, and a Japan-wide manhunt is launched to apprehend them. Meanwhile, Humorize sends its ultimatum to the world. The time limit is 2 hours from now. So honestly, you know, you can tell it's a movie. It's going to be going hardcore. There's some really insane things, but we can't say too much because I don't know how accurate the translation is. In the context of where this is happening, that being in the period between January and March, I think it's very funny that the world survived a global extinction event, but then Japan gets ransacked by a couple of villains and no one shows up to help them. I think that is really funny. It's like you wonder, well, man, it's like I don't even know what kind of metaphor to bring up for that. The mechanism of 2 hours till the world ends is just a suspension mechanism. I do find it interesting that we are going towards an organization that has a philosophy centered around quirks. It's like a mixture of it's a mixture of the Liberation Front and Shizaki, pretty much. Like you have the origin of quirks theory kind of thing, and then you have just the radical organization. Interesting. It's interesting that a situation occurs such that people decide to manhunt the heroes who, I don't know if it's that simple, if it's that easy to go and hunt for your heroes without asking if there's a misconception somewhere. You know, I'm calling bullshit on that. That might just be a giant play to trick the villains or something like that. You know, there's a lot of mechanism they can do to do this. We also still have the he meets the three musketeers, which is probably pointing to another body of heroes. One thing I found hilarious here is just the description saying that UA Academy mustered a global scale team of pro heroes and interns. UA can't do that. But that part is really hilarious in the sense that, well, if UA has the clout to be able to put together a global scale team of pro heroes and interns, they should be able to do that right now in the main story, instead of having to rely on the Public Safety Commission. Remember, in story, the Public Safety Commission being out of function is the reason no one's putting together any big teams or relief teams. So, you know, just from the first little bit, the movie is set up to make you feel like this is going to be a big movie. And they're using a lot of exciting little techniques here and there. They're ramping up the scale of the villains to making it worldwide. They're bringing in maybe potentially those extra heroes from the world over. They have Izuku being on the lam. They have Izuku, you know, being the bad one that everyone's hunting down. Yeah, you know, a lot of different techniques. It's just ramping up the scale. But yeah. Guys, let me know what you thought about the movie too if you have any thoughts. But yeah, anyway, that's it for me. Thank you all for watching. Gonna leave it there. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.